How much do you think a mother's love for her children can be? Is it my blindness, when I trusted my daughter too much, only to find out that I was just a stupid old woman? Or my willingness to give everything I had, even though it was the only lifeline? Listen to this story, maybe you will also look back at your own meaningless sacrifice. My name is Eleanor, I'm 62 years old, and I live in the suburbs of Sacramento, California. It sounds peaceful, but life hasn't been easy for me these past few years. The house I live in may be small, but it's my whole world. My husband Tom passed away 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack. Since then, I've lived alone, quietly. This house isn't just a place to live. It's where Tom and I raised Sophie. It's the place my mother left me, filled with irreplaceable memories. I used to think that as long as I had this house, I'd be okay. But then, everything fell apart in a single day. That day was a Wednesday morning. The Sacramento air was cool, a gentle breeze rustling through the trees in front of the house. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my black coffee, the only thing that helped me stay awake each morning. On the table was an old photo album, the leather cover worn, inside were family photos. I turned to a picture of Sophie when she was 5, her hair in pigtails, grinning next to a pink bicycle. She used to hug me and say, "I love you the most, Mom." I closed my eyes, trying to hold on to that warm feeling, as if it could chase away the coldness in my heart. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reverie. I stood up, dragging my heavy feet to open the door, unaware that that moment would change everything. Sophie stood there, my daughter, thinner than the last time I saw her. Her hair was pulled back messily, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. In her hand was a piece of paper, crumpled as if it had been held too tightly for too long. "Mom," Sophie said, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you." I pulled out a chair for her, poured her a glass of water, my heart already in turmoil. Sophie doesn't visit often, especially not since she married Nathan and moved away. Whenever I called, she was usually busy, or she'd just say a few words and hang up. Seeing her standing in front of me, I was both happy and worried, as if sensing something bad was coming. "I have cancer," Sophie said, placing the paper on the table. "It's terminal. The doctor said I don't have much time left." I felt like the sky was falling, my heart constricted, my hands shaking so much that I spilled the water. I looked at the paper, a medical confirmation from the hospital with a red seal and a scrawled signature. I didn't read it all, just saw the words, "lung cancer, terminal stage." "How could this be?" I murmured, tears welling up. "She's so young, only 35. How could God be so unfair to her?" Sophie took my hand, her eyes wet, but with a strange look in them, as if something wasn't real. "Mom, I just want to be here, in this house for my final days. This is our home, where I grew up. I want to die where I was once happy." Her words were like knives cutting into my heart. I hugged her, sobbing, thinking of nothing but how to comfort her. "Okay, honey," I said, my voice choked. "I'll do anything, as long as you're happy in your final days." Sophie stayed for a while, talking about her illness, about her hospital visits. She said the doctor wanted her to do chemotherapy, but her chances of survival were almost non-existent. I listened, my head spinning, wanting to scream, wanting to run to the hospital and beg for a miracle. She said she was tired, needed to rest, then stood up, hugging me again before leaving. "Thank you, Mom," she said, a weak smile on her lips. I walked Sophie to the door, watching her car disappear behind the oak trees. The medical confirmation lay on the table, a cruel reminder of what I was about to lose. That afternoon, I started cleaning Sophie's old bedroom. I dusted the bookshelves, changed the sheets, even took out some old family photos and placed them on the table. I imagined her lying here, me cooking porridge for her, telling her stories like I used to. Then I took out my mother's old tin box. She left it to me before she passed away. Inside were some jewelry, a few letters, and a diary. I opened the diary, turning to the page where she wrote about this house. "This land in Sacramento has potential, it's very valuable," she wrote. I smiled, thinking my mother was always worrying too much. But then I remembered Sophie, her final days. If this house could bring her some peace, I would make it happen. I didn't need money, didn't need land. I just needed Sophie to be happy, even if it was just for the last few months of her life. The next day, I was sitting in the house like a lost soul when the doorbell rang again. This time it was Nathan, my son-in-law. He stood at the door, wearing a blue shirt, his hair neatly combed, but his eyes were cold as ice. "Mom," he said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. "I heard about Sophie. It's very sad." I nodded, trying to hold back tears, but my throat was constricted. Nathan sat down, looking around the house as if he were appraising each item. "Sophie needs a decent place in her final years. You should give this house to us. Golden Grove is for old people like you. This house is her childhood home. Let her die in comfort and nostalgia. Do it, if you're a real mother." I was stunned, pointing to the hallway leading to Sophie's room. "I'm cleaning her room for her," I said, my voice trembling. "I thought she wanted to come live with me." Nathan smiled, but the smile had no warmth. "Mom, Sophie needs the house, not a bedroom. You move out, let us take care of her." I thought my daughter wanted to live with me, but his words were like a slap in the face. Golden Grove? A nursing home? I never thought about leaving this house. This is where I belonged, where Tom and I had built our whole life. But then I remembered Sophie, her red eyes, her words about her final days. I nodded, my eyes stinging. He smiled, but the smile had no warmth, as if he knew I wouldn't refuse. "Don't keep Sophie waiting, Mom," he said, standing up. "She doesn't have much time." Nathan left, leaving me standing in the living room, still clutching my mother's diary. I looked around. The armchair Tom used to sit in, the painting Sophie made as a child hanging on the wall, the ticking clock on the shelf. Everything seemed to be begging me not to give up, but then I thought of Sophie, of her passing away forever. If I didn't do this, would I still be a mother? I sat down, covered my face, trying to stop the tears. I wanted to believe Nathan, wanted to believe Sophie, but deep down, something felt wrong. Nathan's eyes, the way he talked about Golden Grove, as if I were a burden to be discarded. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed looking at the ceiling, thinking about Sophie. The memories of her pained me but also gave me strength. If giving up the house was what Sophie needed, I would do it. I would do anything for her, even if it cost me my heart. The next morning I called Sophie, but she didn't answer. I texted her, asking how she was, but there was no reply. I told myself she was tired, was at the hospital, but the thorn in my heart dug deeper. I looked at the medical confirmation on the table, trying to read it again, but the words blurred in my eyes. I didn't know that, just a few weeks later, everything I believed would dissolve into thin air. I didn't know that my decision that day would lead me to a storm I was completely unprepared for. I got up, made another cup of coffee, but it went cold before I could drink it. I sat down, looking out the window, where the oak trees still swayed in the breeze. I told myself I had to be strong, for Sophie, for a mother's love. That morning, the Sacramento sky was gray with a light drizzle. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at my face, the wrinkles, the tired eyes. "You're doing the right thing, Eleanor," I told myself, but my voice was weak. I started packing. Each item was a story. The vase Tom bought on a trip to Tahoe, the painting Sophie made in kindergarten, the rug my mother knitted. I wrapped them carefully, but my hands were shaking, as if I were packing my whole life into cardboard boxes. Lily, my granddaughter, arrived at noon. She was 7 years old, with golden hair tied with a pink bow, big round eyes like Sophie used to have. "Grandma," Lily said, hugging my leg, "Mom said you didn't want to see me, but I know you love me." Her words were like a knife. I knelt down, hugging Lily tightly, trying not to cry. "I love you more than the world," I said, my voice choked. "I'm going away for a little while. Then I'll come back, okay?" Lily nodded, but her eyes were full of suspicion, as if she knew I was hiding something. I took a cookie from the box on the table, gave it to her, trying to make the atmosphere lighter. But inside, I wondered, what did Sophie tell her? Why did she think I didn't want to see her? Nathan came to pick up Lily in the late afternoon. He stood at the door, not coming in, just nodding to me. "Thank you for watching Lily," he said, his voice dry. I wanted to ask about Sophie, wanted to know how she was, but Nathan's eyes made me hesitate. He led Lily away, and I stood there, watching the car disappear, feeling like I had lost a part of my heart. I went back inside, closed the door, and the room suddenly became suffocatingly silent. The next day, I went to the lawyer's office to sign the transfer papers. Ms. Carter, the family lawyer, was an elderly woman with gray hair and a warm, deep voice. "Eleanor," she said, pushing up her glasses, "are you sure about this? This is a valuable asset." I nodded, but my hands gripped the edge of the table tightly. "Sophie needs this house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's very sick. I just want her to be happy." Miss Carter looked at me, her eyes full of concern, but she didn't say anything more. I signed the papers, keeping the clause that I could stay in the house until the end of my life. It was Miss Carter's suggestion, and I agreed, even though at the time I didn't think it was important. As I put pen to paper, I felt like I was cutting off a part of my body. The move to Golden Grove was arranged quickly. I hired a small truck, asked some neighbors to help move my belongings. Mr. Joe, the next-door neighbor, shook his head as he carried the last box. "Eleanor, you shouldn't do this. This house is your whole life." I gave him a weak smile, pretending not to hear. "I'm doing it for her," I said, but my voice was lost. Golden Grove was located in the suburbs, more than an hour's drive from my house. As I walked in, the smell of disinfectant hit my nose. The main hall was large, the floor tiled and shiny, but there was no warmth. A staff member, named Mia, led me to my room. "Your room is on the second floor with a window overlooking the garden," she said, trying to smile friendly. The room was small, just enough space for a bed, a table, and a closet. I put the box down, opened my suitcase, took out the family photo, and placed it on the table. The photo was of me, Tom, and Sophie, smiling brightly on a camping trip. Looking at it, I felt like my heart was being squeezed. The first days at Golden Grove passed slowly. I met an old woman who lived in the room next door. She was thin, her hair white as snow, always wearing a sweater even when it wasn't cold. "My son abandoned me here," she said, her voice monotonous. "He took the money, sold the house, and disappeared." I listened, but every word she said was like a pin in my heart. "Sophie wouldn't do that," I told myself. "She needs my house because she's sick." But then I remembered Nathan's eyes, remembered how Sophie didn't answer the phone, the thorn in my heart. The feeling of unease from the day Nathan came to demand the house was now bigger, sharper. I called Sophie every day, but she didn't answer. I texted her, asking, "How are you? I miss you." There was no reply. I wrote a handwritten letter, sent it with an old photo of the two of us, but there was no response. I lied to myself that she was busy, that she was at the hospital, that she would visit when she felt better. But every night, lying on the strange bed at Golden Grove, I couldn't sleep. I looked at the family photo on the table, listened to the ticking clock, and wondered, what did I do wrong? Why didn't Sophie call back? Mia, the staff member at the nursing home, was a rare light at Golden Grove. She was young, in her early 20s, but had a way of talking that made me feel lighter. One day, she brought me a cup of hot tea. "Are you okay, Ms. Eleanor?" she asked. I smiled, but the smile was forced. "I'm okay, just homesick." Mia sat down, told me about her family, about her mother in Nevada. "My mother always said family is everything," she said. I nodded, but my heart ached. Family is everything, but where was my family? One afternoon, I was sitting in the backyard of Golden Grove, looking at the neatly trimmed rose bushes. I took out my phone, called Sophie again. Still just the hopeless ringing. I looked at the screen, saw the last message I sent. "I'm at Golden Grove now. Bring Lily to visit me." No reply. I closed my eyes, trying to stop the tears. I had left my house, left my whole life, for Sophie. But now, I only had myself, and that feeling of unease, like a storm approaching. I couldn't stand the silence at Golden Grove anymore. The long days waiting for a call, a message from Sophie, my daughter, were driving me crazy. I had to go home, had to see her, had to make sure she was okay. My heart was both hopeful and fearful. like someone walking on a thin wire. That morning, the Sacramento sky was damp, gray clouds hanging low. I stood in front of the gate of Golden Grove, wearing my old coat, clutching my purse. Mia, the young staff member, looked at me worriedly. "Mia, Eleanor, are you sure? Take care of yourself traveling so far." I nodded, trying to smile. "I just want to see my daughter. I'll be right back." Mia gave me her phone number, telling me to call if I needed help. I took a taxi, sat in the back seat, looking out the window. The road home was familiar, every turn, every oak tree. I remembered when Sophie was little, holding my hand walking, pointing at the squirrels running on the branches. "Mom, when I grow up, I'll take care of you like you take care of me," she used to say. Her words were now like knives, because I had called her so many times, texted her so many times, but never got an answer. I told myself maybe she was tired, maybe the hospital didn't allow her to use the phone. But the thorn of unease in my heart, the feeling from the day Nathan came to demand the house, had now grown into a stone weighing down my chest. The taxi passed through the city center, where the crowds were bustling. I was looking at the brightly lit shops when I saw a familiar figure. Nathan, my son-in-law, was standing on the corner, holding hands with a young woman. I looked closely, but it wasn't Sophie. He smiled, hugged her, kissed her cheek right in the street. My heart stopped. I shouted to the driver, "Stop, stop!" He was startled, pulled the car over to the side of the road. I took out my old phone, my hands shaking, took pictures of every moment. Nathan and the girl, clear as day. I gasped, telling myself I had to let Sophie know. She was sick, needed him, yet he dared to betray her like this? I had to tell her. But some truths, once known, can't be undone. And I was about to hear something that no mother would ever want to believe. I told the driver to continue to the house. The closer I got, the more confused I became. Surely she was lying tired in her hospital bed. When the taxi stopped in front of the house, I was stunned. The lights were bright, loud music blaring from inside. A party, right in my house. I got out of the car, my legs feeling weak. I stood outside the fence, looking through the window. Inside, Sophie's friends were laughing, raising their glasses, as if this were a birthday party, not a farewell to someone dying. Then I heard Sophie's voice. Not weak, not trembling, but loud, sharp, full of mockery. "My mom is really a stupid old hag," she said, laughter ringing out with her friends. "I faked being sick a little and got the whole house. This house is mine now." Her words were like a knife stabbing straight into my heart. I stood there gripping the fence, my head spinning. Sophie wasn't sick. She and Nathan had lied to me, just to get the house. Before that, one time when I visited my house, Nathan brought his niece, just when I was opening my mother's iron box to read the diary again. Maybe Nathan saw the diary and made this plan. I was so happy to welcome my niece that I forgot that the box was still open on the table in the living room. Then I got tea and cookies for Nathan. When I came back, I saw him sneaking around, pretending not to see anything. But at that time, I didn't suspect too much, thinking that he was a man who would never rummage through women's things. I looked through the window, saw Sophie raising a glass of wine, her eyes without a hint of regret. She was wearing a red dress, smiling brightly, as if she had just won a big game. I wanted to rush in, wanted to shout, wanted to ask her why, but my legs were like lead. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I turned away, walked into the street, not looking back. Tears didn't fall, but my heart was numb. I had given Sophie everything, the house, the love, my whole life, and she repaid me with a lie, with contemptuous laughter. I walked, not knowing where to go, just wanting to get away from that house, away from that truth. My head was spinning, but amidst the pain, a small flame flared up. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let Sophie and Nathan turn me into a loser. I stopped on a street corner, took out my phone, looked at the pictures of Nathan and the girl. They were evidence, something I would use to talk to Sophie, to show her who her husband really was. But then I thought, would she care? If she had lied to me, had laughed at me, what would these pictures mean to her? I put away my phone, sighed. I needed time, needed to figure out how to get back what was mine. I took a taxi back to Golden Grove, sitting silently the whole way. The driver asked if I was okay, but I just nodded. When I got back to my room, I closed the door, sat on the bed, looking at the family photo on the table. I just sat there, embracing the pain, not because of the house, but because of what I had sacrificed. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the wind blowing through the window. I couldn't sleep. I didn't know what I would do next, but I knew one thing: I wouldn't let this betrayal defeat me. I would get up, even if it was just to prove that I still had strength. I clenched my fists, feeling the flame in my heart burn brighter. This was just the beginning. And I thought silence isn't necessarily weakness. There are mothers who, when pushed to the brink, don't scream, but quietly get up. And each of my next steps will be a sharper knife than any accusation. The small room at Golden Grove was still cold, but I didn't notice. I took out Sophie's medical confirmation, the one she gave me that day. It was still in my purse, crumpled, with the red seal and the scrawled signature. I looked at it, clutching it tightly, wondering, if Sophie dared to lie about the house, was this real? I put on my coat, took my wallet, and left the room. I had to go to the hospital, had to know the truth. I took the bus to St. Mary's Hospital, which was written on the paper. The Sacramento sky was sunny that day, but I couldn't feel anything but the storm inside me. On the bus, my mind only thought of Sophie, of how she laughed at me at the party. I had done everything for her, yet she repaid me with a cruel lie. Arriving at the hospital, I walked to the reception desk, gave the paper to a young staff member. "I need to check this," I said, my voice trembling but trying to stay calm. "This is my daughter's medical confirmation, Sophie Harper." The girl looked at the paper, then frowned. "Please wait a moment," she said, taking the paper inside. I stood there, wringing my hands, my heart burning. 10 minutes later, a middle-aged man wearing a white coat came out. "Are you Sophie Harper's mother?" he asked. I nodded. He looked at me, shaking his head. "Ms. Eleanor, there is no patient named Sophie in our system, and this seal isn't from the hospital. This is a fake." I felt like the floor was collapsing beneath my feet. Fake? Sophie had not only lied to me about the house, but had also faked cancer? I wanted to scream, wanted to run back and confront her, but I just stood there, gripping the edge of the counter. "Thank you," I whispered, turning away. Leaving the hospital, I sat on a bench outside the gate, watching the people passing by. I remembered the times Sophie told small lies as a child, like stealing cookies and blaming the dog. But this was a deep knife wound, and I didn't know how to heal it. On the way back to Golden Grove, I called Jane Carter, the family's old lawyer. I had gone to her office to sign the house transfer papers, and now I needed her more than ever. "Jane," I said when she answered, "I need to see you. It's important." Jane agreed to meet me that afternoon. I went back to my room, took out the copy of the transfer agreement that Miss Carter had kept. I didn't know how important it was until now. In the agreement, there was a clause stating that I could stay in the house until the end of my life. Nathan didn't know this, and I would use it to fight back. That afternoon, I went to Jane's office in downtown Sacramento. The office was small, smelled of old paper, but I felt safe sitting across from Jane. She was older, her eyes sharp. I told her everything: the fake paper, the party, Sophie's laughter, and the pictures I took of Nathan cheating. Jane listened, taking notes, without interrupting. When I was done, she pushed up her glasses, said, "Eleanor, this is serious fraud. The fake paper is strong evidence, and the original contract will protect your rights. I will help you sue Sophie and Nathan, not only to get the house back, but also for forging documents." I nodded, but my heart ached. Sue my own daughter? I never imagined this day would come. I had no choice. "Do it, Jane," I said, my voice harder than I thought. "I want them to pay." Jane nodded, shook my hand. "We will win, Eleanor, I promise." Returning to Golden Grove, I felt stronger, but also empty. I sat in the backyard, where Mia tended the rose bushes. I thought about Lily, my granddaughter. She didn't deserve to be caught between her parents. I wanted to protect her. But first, I had to protect myself. I took out my phone, looked at the pictures of Nathan cheating. They were my weapon, but I decided not to use them yet. I would let Jane do her work, and I would wait. Wait for the day Sophie and Nathan had to face the truth. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the ticking clock. I thought about Tom, my husband. If he were alive, what would he say? He would hug me, tell me to be strong, as he used to do whenever I fell. I closed my eyes, telling myself I was doing the right thing. I have gone through the most painful days of my life. With the forged medical certificate and the original contract in hand, I, along with my lawyer Jane Carter, sued Sophie and Nathan. But litigation was not enough. I wanted the whole world to know the truth, to expose Sophie's false face. I chose social media, which she always used to show off her perfect life, to reveal everything. That morning I sat in the small room at Golden Grove, the sunlight filtering through the window, shining on the family photo on the table. Sophie in the photo, the 5-year-old girl, smiled brightly, making my heart ache. I wanted to forget her, but every time I looked at the photo, memories flooded back. Mia, the young staff member at Golden Grove, knocked on the door, bringing me a cup of hot coffee. "Miss Eleanor, are you okay?" she asked, sitting down on the chair. I told her about the lawsuit, about the fake paper, about Sophie's mocking laughter at the party. Mia listened, her eyes wide, then said, "Ma'am, if you want everyone to know the truth, why not post it online? Sophie likes to show off on Instagram, right? Post it there, the whole world will see." I was stunned. Instagram? I only knew how to open emails, make phone calls. Social media was a foreign world to an old woman like me. But Mia smiled, took out her phone. "Let me help you," she said, her voice excited. I took the lawsuit document from Jane, a paper full of legal words, clearly stating that Sophie was being sued for fraud and forgery. Mia took a picture of the paper, then opened Instagram on her phone. "What do you want to write?" she asked. I thought for a moment, then said, "Write that this is the truth about Sophie Harper, the sick girl. Her medical confirmation is fake, and she is being sued for defrauding me. Don't be fooled like me." Mia typed quickly, then showed me. The post was simple, just a photo of the document and a few lines of text, but I felt like I had dropped a bomb. "Are you sure?" Mia asked one last time, her finger hovering on the screen. I nodded, my heart pounding. Mia pressed the post button, and the post appeared on the new account she created for me, with the name Eleanor Truth 62. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew I couldn't go back. This was how I got my voice back. Just a few hours later, Mia's phone lit up with notifications. The post spread like wildfire. Old friends of mine in Sacramento, neighbors who used to know Sophie, even strangers started commenting. "Fraud," one person wrote. "How could you treat your mother like that?" another asked. Some people dragged Nathan in, calling him a scumbag husband. I sat there, looking at the screen, both satisfied and pained. Satisfied that the truth had been revealed. Pained that the child I used to love was now being criticized by the whole world. Now, I was the one breaking her world. The next day, Mia showed me Sophie's Instagram. She had locked the comments, but it was too late. Hundreds of people had left angry messages under her latest post. A picture of her wearing a red dress, smiling brightly at the party. "Fraud, ungrateful child," they wrote. I remembered when Sophie showed off her Instagram, saying she had thousands of followers, that everyone admired her life. Now, social media was turning against her, and I was the one pushing her into that line. I wasn't happy, wasn't gloating. I just felt empty. I wondered, had I gone too far? I was just doing what I had to do. I looked at the roses, took a deep breath, trying to keep myself calm. I had chosen this path, and I would go to the end. That afternoon, I received a call from Rachel, an old friend of Sophie's. Rachel had come to my house a few times, a blonde girl, talkative. "Ms. Eleanor," she said, her voice urgent. "Sophie is panicking. She knows the post is from you. She is trying to retaliate, saying she will sue you for defamation." I chuckled dryly, not expecting her to go that far. "Let her try," I said. "I have the truth, and I have a lawyer." Rachel was silent, then said, "I just wanted you to know, I'm sorry for Sophie. I thanked her, hung up, my heart mixed with anger and sadness. I went back to my room, I called Jane, told her about Rachel's call. Jane said, Sophie has no basis to sue you, but we need to prepare. If she wants to play dirty, we will respond. I nodded, even though Jane couldn't see. Thank you, Jane, I said. I won't stop. I hung up, sat on the bed, listening to the ticking clock. Lily, my granddaughter, she was also inadvertently dragged into this mess. I wanted to protect her, wanted her to grow up without the stain of her parents. And I thought about myself. Even at this age, I was still picking up the pieces of my life. Sophie and Nathan may have lied to me, but I would continue, not out of hatred, but because I deserved to live with self-respect. That morning, I received a call from Jane Carter, my lawyer. Eleanor, we won the first step, she said, her voice excited. The court accepted the evidence of the fake paper. Compensation will be resolved soon. I sat at the small table in the Golden Grove room, holding the phone tightly, my heart beating fast. Compensation. I had never thought about money when I started the lawsuit, but now it was an opportunity for me to regain a part of my life. Thank you, Jane, I said, my voice hoarse. I knew what I had to do with this money. I started looking for a new place to live. Golden Grove wasn't bad, but it wasn't home. I wanted a place of my own, where I could breathe without feeling suffocated. I scrolled through the local newspapers, looking for housing advertisements. A small news item caught my eye. An apartment near the beach in Monterey, a few hours' drive from Sacramento. It wasn't big, just one bedroom, but it had a balcony overlooking the sea. I called the broker right away, a guy named Mike. Is the apartment still available? I asked. Yes, would you like to see it? He replied. I did not hesitate. I'll be there tomorrow. The next day I took the bus to Monterey. As I walked into the apartment, I knew I had found the right place. The room was bright, the smell of sea salt wafting through the window. I stood on the balcony, listening to the waves, and for the first time in months I felt relieved. I'll take it, I told Mike. He smiled, gave me the paperwork. I used part of the compensation money to buy the apartment, without having to borrow. When I signed the paper, I didn't think about Sophie or Nathan. I just thought about myself, about a new beginning. Returning to Golden Grove, I began planning something else. I wanted to do something for people like me. Old people who were abandoned, forgotten. I remembered Martha, the old woman in the next room who told me about her son who sold the house and disappeared. I remembered the afternoons at Golden Grove when everyone sat in silence, no one visiting. I decided to set up a charity fund called Golden Hearts to help the old people here have happier days. I called Mia, told her about the idea. Eleanor, that's great, she exclaimed. I'll help you. I used part of the compensation money to start Golden Hearts. Mia and I organized the first outing for the old people at Golden Grove, to a park nearby. Martha was the first to sign up. That day, I saw her smile, really smile, as she sat on the bench, eating ice cream and listening to the children play. Thank you, Eleanor, she said, holding my hand. I nodded, trying not to cry. I didn't do this to be praised, but because I understood the feeling of being abandoned. I didn't want anyone to suffer that like me. Mia became my right hand. She was young, dynamic, and had a talent for organizing. We planned dinners, movie screenings, even invited a local band to play for the old people. Golden Hearts wasn't big, but it brought smiles to those who needed it most. Mia told me, Ms. Eleanor, you're changing their lives. I smiled, shook my head. I'm just trying to change my own life. But deep down, I knew she was right. Each smile from Martha, each thank you from the old people, was a piece of the puzzle that helped me heal. But I wasn't always strong. There were nights when I lay in the Golden Grove room, thinking about Sophie. I heard she was living alone, her friends turning their backs after the Instagram incident. Part of me wanted to call her, wanted to ask why, wanted to forgive. But then I remembered her laughter, remembered how she called me old hag. I couldn't go back. I had given her everything, and she had chosen to betray me. I closed my eyes, trying to dispel the image of Sophie, but it still haunted me, like a ghost that wouldn't leave. I started moving my belongings to the apartment in Monterey. I didn't bring much, just a few boxes of clothes, some books, and the family photo. I put the photo on the table in the new apartment, but this time, I didn't look at it with pain. I looked at it as a reminder. I had lost a lot, but I still had myself. I stood on the balcony, listening to the waves, and told myself, this is my new home. This is my new life. One afternoon, I was sitting in the park near Golden Grove looking at Martha and the other old people. Mia brought a tray of cookies, smiling brightly. Mia, Eleanor, do you see? Everyone is so happy. I nodded, feeling a warmth spreading. That night, I lay in bed at Golden Grove, listening to the wind blowing through the window. I no longer thought of Sophie with pain. I thought about the new apartment, about golden hearts, about the smiles I had brought. I clenched my hand, feeling the flame in my heart still burning, but this time, it wasn't the fire of anger. It was the fire of hope, of resilience. I knew I was starting over, and this time, I would live for myself. One late autumn morning, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment in Monterey, sipping a cup of coffee, looking out at the sea. The air was cool, white clouds drifting lazily across the blue sky. On the table in front of me was a small envelope. Inside were the pictures I took when I saw Nathan, my son-in-law, holding hands with a young woman in Sacramento. I had kept them since that day, unused, because I wanted to focus on the lawsuit with lawyer Jane. But today, I knew it was time. I wanted Sophie, my daughter, to see who Nathan really was. Not through words, but through clear evidence. And I chose the right day for their wedding anniversary, as a bitter gift. I took a piece of paper, scribbled a few lines. To Sophie, maybe you should know the truth about the husband you trust. I didn't sign my name, it wasn't necessary. I put the pictures in the envelope, sealed it, and wrote the address of the house in Sacramento, where Sophie and Nathan still lived. I stood up, put on my coat, and went to the post office nearby. The clerk, a young woman with her hair tied up high, smiled and asked, "Sending something important, ma'am?" I just smiled faintly. "A gift," I said, handing the envelope over the counter. As she put on the stamp, I felt a mixture of emotions, satisfaction, but also pain. What was I doing to my daughter? But then, I remembered Sophie's laughter, remembered how she called me stupid old hag. I turned away, walked out of the post office, not looking back. A few days later, I received a call from Mr. Joe, my old neighbor in Sacramento. He called one afternoon, his voice full of excitement, as if he were telling a hot story. "Eleanor, Sophie's house is a mess," he said. I heard arguing, the sound of things breaking. Sophie screamed, calling Nathan a scumbag. It seemed she received something in the mail. I sat in my apartment, holding the phone tightly, not saying anything. I knew it was my envelope. Mr. Joe continued. Neighbors said Sophie tore something up but couldn't deny it. She kicked Nathan out of the house. I thanked him, hung up, and sat silently, looking out at the sea. The waves crashed steadily, but couldn't soothe the heavy feeling in my heart. I wasn't happy, not really. I just felt empty. I remembered when Sophie bragged about Nathan, calling him the perfect husband. I remembered how she held his hand, smiling brightly on their wedding day, her eyes full of hope. Now, I was the one shattering that illusion. I wasn't doing this to gloat, but to show Sophie that her own lies had led to this outcome. But deep down, I still hurt. Sophie was my daughter, even though she had betrayed me, and pushing her into pain didn't make me happy. I wondered, would I ever regret it? But then I remembered the house in Sacramento, a lifetime of memories, and I knew I wasn't wrong. I called Jane, told her about the envelope and the news from Mr. Joe. Jane sighed on the phone. "Eleanor, you played this card hard," she said, her voice tinged with worry. "But it helps our case. If Sophie and Nathan separate, they'll be weaker." I nodded in agreement. "I don't want to ruin her life," I said, my voice hoarse. "I just want her to understand." Jane was silent for a moment, then said, "You're a mother, Eleanor, but you're also a human being. Don't blame yourself. I thanked her, hung up, but her words didn't soothe the heavy feeling in my heart. I had done what I had to do, but the price was another wound in my heart. That weekend, I returned to Golden Grove to visit everyone at the nursing home. The Golden Hearts Foundation had just organized an outdoor movie screening, and I saw everyone sitting in folding chairs, smiling as they watched an old John Wayne movie. "Eleanor, you remind me of my youth," she said, her eyes sparkling. I looked at everyone laughing and told myself that I was doing the right thing. Golden Hearts was proof that I could bring goodness, even after everything that had happened. I returned to Monterey, stood on the balcony of my apartment, listening to the waves. I wanted to live, really live, with the self-respect I had left. One afternoon, Mia called me from Golden Grove. "Is Eleanor? There are rumors in Sacramento," she said, her voice lowered. "People say Sophie and Nathan are officially separated. She moved out, living alone." I sat down on the chair, my hands shaking. Separated. Her marriage, which she once bragged was perfect, had broken down. I didn't expect my envelope to lead to this. I wanted to say something, wanted to feel gloating, but I just felt sad. I had lost Sophie a long time ago, but now I knew she was losing everything too. I thanked Mia, hung up, and sat silently, looking out at the sea. The waves still crashed, steadily, as if reminding me that life went on, even though my heart still hurt. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I was going in the right direction. And now I would continue to live, not for anyone else, but for myself. One early winter morning, I stood on the balcony of my apartment in Monterey, listening to the waves crashing steadily against the shore. A cold wind blew through, making me shiver, but I didn't go inside. I was thinking about what had happened, from Sophie deceiving me to get the house in Sacramento, to the envelope containing pictures of Nathan cheating that I sent, leading to their broken marriage. I had rebuilt my life with the Golden Hearts Foundation and the new apartment, but the shadow of Sophie, my daughter, was still like an unhealed wound. I didn't know that that day she would appear at my door, begging for forgiveness, and I would have to face the hardest choice of my life. That day, I had just returned from the grocery store, carrying a paper bag with bread, coffee, and some apples. I opened the apartment door, put the bag on the kitchen table, and was about to make a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. I frowned, because rarely did anyone visit me in Monterey. I wiped my hands on my apron, went to open the door, and was stunned. Sophie stood there, thin, her hair disheveled, her eyes red as if she had been crying. Her clothes were disheveled, her old sweater worn at the shoulders, as if she hadn't slept for days. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you." I stood still holding the doorknob, my head spinning. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut, but another part, the mother in me, couldn't turn away. I let Sophie in, pointing to the sofa. "Sit down," I said, my voice colder than I wanted. She quietly sat down, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes looking at the wooden floor. I went into the kitchen, poured water into 2 glasses, not because I wanted to entertain, but because I needed to do something to keep calm. I put the glass in front of Sophie, then sat down on the chair opposite her, far enough away that I wouldn't be drawn into the emotion. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice even though my heart was pounding. Sophie looked up, her eyes wet. "Mom?" "I was wrong," she said, her voice choked. "I didn't know things would go this far. I just wanted the house, but I didn't want to lose you." Her words were like knives cutting into my heart. I remembered her laughter at the party in Sacramento, remembered how she called me stupid old hag. I remembered the fake medical confirmation, remembered how she and Nathan planned to deceive me. "Sophie," I said, my voice hardening, "do you think a few apologies will erase what you've done?" She cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, making me want to stand up, hug her like I used to, but I couldn't. "Mom, I know I was wrong," Sophie continued, her voice trembling. "Nathan, he told me to do it. He said the house was worth it, that we would have everything. But now he's left me. My friends have turned their backs. I've lost everything." I looked at Sophie, the child I once loved more than my own life. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think that Nathan was the one behind it all, but I remembered Sophie's eyes at the party, remembered how she laughed at me without a hint of remorse. "You've lost everything?" I said, my voice calm but sharp as a knife. "Did you think of me when you took the house? When you faked being sick? When you laughed in my face?" Sophie bowed her head, sobbing, but I didn't soften. I remembered the nights at Golden Grove, when I called and she didn't answer, when I waited and she didn't come. I remembered how she chose money over the love of a mother. Sophie knelt down, took my hand, crying loudly. "Mom, I beg you, I have no one else. You're my family." Her hands were shaking, cold, but I pulled my hand away, stood up, went to the window. I looked out at the sea, trying to keep myself from collapsing. But what is family when the child I loved most has betrayed me? "Sophie," I said, not turning around. "You've chosen your path. Now I'm choosing mine." I heard her crying louder, her sobs heartbreaking, but I didn't turn around. I opened the door, signaling her to leave. "Go," I said, my voice hard as stone. Sophie stood up, staggering, looking at me as if begging for another chance. But I couldn't. Not because I didn't love her, but because I couldn't let her drag me down again. She walked out sobbing, and I closed the door, leaning against the wall, feeling like I had lost a part of my soul. I sat down on the sofa, covering my face, trying to stop the tears. I remembered the times Sophie was little, when she hugged me, called me her hero. I remembered the time she fell off her bike. I ran out, bandaged her wounds, held her until she stopped crying. But now, she was no longer that little girl. She had chosen money, chosen Nathan, chosen lies. And I had to choose myself. I didn't cry, but my heart ached as if it were being squeezed. I called Jane, told her about the meeting. "You did the right thing, Eleanor," she said, her voice warm. "You gave her a chance and she ruined it. Now it's time for you to live for yourself." I nodded, even though she couldn't see. "Thank you, Jane," I said, hanging up. I stood up, went to the balcony, looking at the sea. The waves still crashed, steadily, as if reminding me that life went on. I had told Sophie that I would protect Lily, and that was a promise I would keep, even if Sophie was no longer in my life. The next day, I returned to Golden Grove, bringing a tray of cookies for the old people. Martha saw me, smiled brightly, her eyes lighting up. "Eleanor, you look different," she said. "Stronger." I smiled, not saying anything, but I knew she was right. The meeting with Sophie had taken a part of me, but it had also given me freedom. I was no longer bound by the pain, by the hope that she would change. I had let go, and for the first time I felt relieved. I sat with Martha, listened to her talk about the John Wayne movie from the other day, and for the first time in months I smiled happily. I knew I had overcome not only Sophie, but also the pain within myself, and I knew from now on I would live for myself, with all that I had left. After visiting the nursing home, I returned to my small house near the sea. The sea breeze blew through the wide-open window, bringing with it the salty scent of the ocean, soothing my heart, feeling so peaceful. After rejecting Sophie, I had let go of the pain that had imprisoned me. I had regained my strength. But I knew my journey wasn't over. I wanted to spend the rest of my days bringing joy to others and ensuring Lily had a good future, not overshadowed by her parents. One early spring morning, I received a call from Mia, the young staff member at Golden Grove. "Ms. Eleanor, we got funding," she exclaimed over the phone. "A local company wants to support Golden Hearts. They'll pay for a big trip." I sat at the kitchen table, holding a cup of coffee, not believing my ears. Golden Hearts, the charity I set up to help the elderly at the nursing home, had now been noticed. "Really, Mia?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Really? They want us to organize a trip to Santa Cruz Beach. What do you think?" I laughed loudly for the first time in months. "Do it right away, Mia. The old people will love it." I quickly took the bus to Golden Grove the next day, bringing a set of plans that Mia and I had drafted over the phone. We wanted this trip to be special. Not just a picnic, but a day for the old people to feel alive, to feel loved. I sat with Martha by the newly planted garden. Without saying much, her Her smile was enough. She was sitting in the hall, knitting a woolen scarf. "Eleanor, I heard you're organizing a trip to the beach," she asked, her eyes lighting up. I nodded, sat down next to her. "Martha, you'll see the sun, hear the waves, and eat ice cream like when you were young," she laughed, took my hand. "You're an angel, Eleanor." The trip was planned for the weekend. Mia and I hired a large bus, enough for 30 old people at Golden Grove. I stood on Santa Cruz Beach watching the old people laugh, some sitting on folding chairs, some strolling on the sand. Martha, with her woolen scarf around her neck, stood in front of the sea, her arms outstretched as if she wanted to embrace the entire ocean. "I haven't seen the sea since my husband passed away," she said, her voice choked. I stood next to her, feeling my eyes stinging. "You deserve it," I said, holding her hand. As the sun set, the old people sang an old folk song, and I sat there, listening to the singing blend with the waves, feeling my heart as light as a cloud. During my self-healing days, I still remembered Lily. I knew she was living with Sophie but not happy. I wanted to protect her, wanted her to grow up without the stain of her parents. I decided to set up a trust fund for Lily, using the remaining money. I hadn't seen Lily since I left Sacramento, but I couldn't let her grow up in her parents' darkness. I called an old friend, Helen, who still lived near the old neighborhood. "Helen, can you keep an eye on Lily for me?" I asked. "I want to know how she is." Helen agreed, and a few days later she called back. "Eleanor, Lily is okay, but she's sad. Sophie doesn't take care of her much. She often mentions you." Helen's words made my heart clench. I knew I had to do something for Lily. I called Jane, asked about the trust fund. "Everything is done, Eleanor," she said. "Lily will receive the money when she's 18 years old. You've given her a great opportunity." I thanked Jane, hung up, and sat on the balcony, looking at the sea. I had used part of it to buy the apartment, part for Golden Hearts, and the rest for Lily. I didn't need much money, didn't need luxury. I just needed to know that I had done the right thing, that I had left something good in the world. One afternoon, I received an envelope from Helen. Inside was a painting Lily had drawn, sent through a neighbor. The painting showed me and Lily standing next to each other, holding hands, under a starry sky. At the bottom, Lily wrote clumsily, "Grandma is my hero." I sat down, hugged the painting to my chest, and for the first time in months, I cried. But not because of pain, but because of happiness. Lily still remembered me, still loved me, and that was all I needed to continue. I returned to Golden Grove the following week, bringing a tray of cookies for the old people. Martha saw me, pulled me down to sit. "Eleanor, tell me about the garden," she said, her eyes lighting up. I smiled, told her about my and Mia's plans. Other old people joined in, each contributing an idea, planting tulips, putting a small fountain, even making a corner to raise birds. I listened, feeling like I was at home. Golden Hearts wasn't just a charity, but my new family, where I found purpose and joy. I returned to Monterey, stood on the balcony, looking at the sea, feeling peace creeping into my heart. One early summer morning, I woke up early, made a cup of coffee, and sat at the small kitchen table. Sunlight streamed through the window, making the apartment bright. I opened my notebook, where I wrote down plans for Golden Hearts. Today, I had a meeting with Mia and a new donor who wanted to expand the fund to help more nursing homes in California. I put on a light sweater, took my bag, and took the bus to Golden Grove. On the bus, I looked out the window, seeing the green fields stretching out. I smiled, thinking about my journey, from a betrayed mother to a woman who was changing the lives of others. Arriving at Golden Grove, Mia greeted me in the hall, hugging me tightly. "Miss Eleanor, are you ready?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. I nodded, walked into the small meeting room where a middle-aged man, Mr. Thomas, was waiting. He was the owner of a construction company, wanted to contribute to Golden Hearts because his mother used to live in a nursing home. "Ms. Eleanor," he said, shaking my hand, "your work is inspiring. I want to fund more events and maybe build a garden for the old people here." I listened, my heart beating fast. A garden? That was something I had never thought of, but the idea excited me. After the meeting, Mia and I walked in the backyard of Golden Grove. "Miss Eleanor, do you see? Mia said, pointing to the rose bushes. If there was a big garden, the old people would have a place to sit, chat, even plant trees. I nodded, imagining people sitting on benches, knitting under the trees. You're a genius, I said, laughing loudly. We started planning, drawing diagrams, contacting volunteers. I didn't expect Golden Hearts, which started as a way to heal myself, to become a small movement, bringing joy to many people. That afternoon, I received a call from Helen. "Eleanor, I have news about Sophie," she said, her voice lowered. "She moved away to another city. Heard she's trying to start over." I sat down on the chair, holding the phone tightly. I wasn't angry with Sophie anymore, but I also didn't want to see her again. "Thank you, Helen," I said. "Is she okay?" Helen sighed. "She's lonely, but she chose that path." I nodded, hung up, and looked out at the sea. I no longer hurt when I thought about Sophie. I had let go, and now I just hoped she would find peace, like I was finding. I thought about Lily, the girl who was the light in my dark days. I couldn't change the past, but I could give her a better future. I took out the painting Lily drew, placed it on the table. The small painting Lily sent was right on the table, reminding me that, no matter what, she still called me her hero. I sat down, wrote another letter to Lily, longer, telling about what I had learned, that family wasn't always perfect, but true love would always find a way. "Dear Lily," I wrote, "Grandma made mistakes, loved blindly, but I learned that you have to be true to yourself. This fund is for you to have the opportunity to choose your own path. Grandma loves you, and I will always be your hero." I folded the letter, sent it to Jane, asking her to keep it with the trust fund documents. I didn't know what Lily would think when she read this letter, but I hoped she would understand that I had done everything for her. As usual, I went to Golden Grove on the weekend. This time I brought a tray of cookies for the old people. Martha saw me, pulled me down to sit. "Eleanor, tell me about the garden," she said, her eyes lighting up. I smiled, told about my and Mia's plans. Other old people joined in, each contributing an idea, planting tulips, putting a small fountain, even making a corner to raise birds. I listened, feeling like I was at home. Golden Hearts wasn't just a charity, but my new family, where I found purpose and joy. One afternoon, I sat on the balcony of my apartment. I thought about myself, the woman who had gone through hell and still stood up. I had lost a lot, but I knew I had overcome. Not only Sophie and Nathan, but also the pain within myself. I had won, not by revenge, but by keeping my self-respect, by living a life worth living. I held my hand, feeling peaceful and content. I looked out at the sea, saw the sun setting, dyeing the sky a brilliant orange. I knew I had found myself again, and that was my greatest victory. If you have stayed until the end of this story, I believe that somewhere in your heart, you also have a scar, a loss, or someone you once loved so much that you forgot yourself. Maybe you, like Eleanor, once believed that sacrifice was enough to keep a family together. But sometimes, the bravest thing is to learn to let go. To keep for yourself a little peace, a little self-respect, and a belief that you still deserve to be loved. If you have ever experienced such quiet moments, please share your story with us. Who knows, your story may be the light for someone out there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue to accompany us. Listen to everyday but touching stories where every wound has the opportunity to be healed with sincerity and kindness. See you in the next stories.